I'm 79 years old, and I need to tell you something that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. For 25 years, I didn't speak to my son. 25 years. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. For a quarter of a century, my only child and I lived on the same earth, breathed the same air, and existed as complete strangers to each other. I missed his wedding. I missed the birth of his children. I missed everything that mattered. And for most of those years, I told myself I was right. I told myself he was the one who needed to apologize. I told myself that a man has to stand by his principles, even when it costs him everything. I was a fool. Stay with me, because this story might save you from making the same mistake I did. My son Michael was born in 1971. He was the center of my world from the moment I first held him. I remember looking at this tiny person, this miracle, and promising myself I would give him everything I never had. I grew up poor, you see. My father was a hard man who believed that love was something you showed through discipline, not affection. He never told me he loved me. Not once. And I swore I would be different with my own son. I would be present. I would be warm. I would be the father I always wished I had. And for a while I was. When Michael was young, we were inseparable. I coached his little league team. I helped him with his homework every night at the kitchen table. I taught him to ride a bike, to fish, to drive a car. I was there for all of it. Those years when he was small and looked at me like I had all the answers, those were the best years of my life. I didn't know it then. You never know it when you're living it. Things started to change when Michael became a teenager. He got quieter, more distant. He started questioning everything I said, challenging every rule I set. I know now that this is normal. This is what teenagers do. They push against their parents because that's how they figure out who they are. But I didn't understand it then. I took it personally. I saw his independence as rejection, his questions as disrespect. And instead of giving him room to grow, I tightened my grip. I became more controlling, more demanding, more like my own father, even though I had sworn I would never be that man. The real trouble started when Michael turned 18 and told me he didn't want to go to college. I had saved money for years for his education. I had sacrificed vacations, new cars, everything, so he could have opportunities I never had. And here he was, telling me he wanted to be a musician instead. A musician. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him he was throwing his life away. I told him he was being selfish and ungrateful. I told him that if he walked out that door to chase some foolish dream, he shouldn't bother coming back. He walked out the door. I expected him to come back in a week, maybe a month, with his tail between his legs, ready to admit I was right. He didn't. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years, and with each passing year, the wall between us grew higher. My wife Margaret tried to bridge the gap. She would call Michael secretly, send him money when he was struggling, beg me to reach out. But I refused. He was the one who left, I told her. He was the one who chose his foolish dreams over his family. He could be the one to apologize. Margaret passed away in 2005. Cancer. She was 63 years old, and she died with a broken heart because her husband and her son couldn't be in the same room together. Michael came to the funeral. We stood on opposite sides of the grave, and we didn't exchange a single word. I looked at him across that hole in the ground, and I saw a stranger, a 44-year-old man I didn't know at all. He had gray in his hair, lines on his face. He was a grown man, and I had missed all of it. And still, even then, Standing over my wife's coffin, I couldn't bring myself to speak first. My pride wouldn't let me. After Margaret died, I was alone. Completely alone. I had friends, sure. I had my routines. But I would sit in my empty house every evening, eating dinner by myself, watching television until I fell asleep in my chair. And I would think about Michael. I would wonder where he was, what he was doing, whether he ever thought about me. I would pick up the phone sometimes, just to hold it, just to imagine calling him. But I never did. Because what would I say? How do you apologize for 20 years of silence? How do you admit that you were wrong about everything? The years kept passing. I turned 70, then 75. My health started to decline. Nothing dramatic, just the slow wearing down that happens when you've been alive for 3/4 of a century. I had a lot of time to think, too much time. And the thing I thought about most was Michael. Not with anger anymore. The anger had burned itself out long ago. Now there was just sadness, a deep, heavy sadness that sat in my chest every single day. It was my doctor who finally shook me awake. I went in for a checkup when I was 77, and he told me my heart was getting weaker. Nothing immediately life-threatening, he said. But I should get my affairs in order, just in case. I drove home from that appointment in a daze. Get my affairs in order. What affairs? I had no one to leave anything to. No one to sit with me if things got bad. No one to hold my hand at the end. I had a son out there somewhere, maybe grandchildren I had never met, and I was going to die alone because I was too proud to say I was sorry. That night I sat down and wrote Michael a letter. Not an email, a real letter. On paper, in my own handwriting. I wrote for 3 hours. I told him everything. I told him I was wrong to give him that ultimatum. I told him I was wrong to let my pride keep us apart for so long. I told him about his mother, how she never stopped loving him, how she talked about him until her last breath. I told him I was sick and scared and lonely. I told him I didn't expect forgiveness. I just needed him to know that I was sorry, that I had always loved him, even when I was too stubborn to show it. That not a day had gone by in 25 years when I didn't think about him. I mailed the letter and waited. A week went by, then 2, then a month. I started to accept that he wasn't going to respond, that I had waited too long and broken too much, and some things just can't be fixed. I tried to make peace with it. I told myself at least I had tried, at least I had finally said the words, even if he never read them. Then one Sunday morning, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there he was. My son, 53 years old, gray hair, reading glasses tucked into his shirt pocket, looking so much like me at that age it took my breath away. He was holding my letter in his hand, and he was crying. We stood there in the doorway for what felt like hours, just looking at each other. I didn't know what to say. After 25 years of silence, what words could possibly be enough? But then Michael did something I didn't expect. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. He hugged me, and he said 4 words that broke me completely. He said, "I missed you, Dad." I collapsed into that hug. I held onto my son like a drowning man holds onto a life raft. And I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. 25 years of grief and regret and loneliness, there came pouring out of me all at once. We stood in that doorway, 2 old men holding each other and sobbing, and I understood something I had been too blind to see my entire life. Being right doesn't matter. Being together matters. Michael came inside, and we talked for 6 hours straight. He told me about his life, about the music career that had actually worked out, not in the way I had imagined, but in his own way. He was a music teacher now at a high school in Oregon. He had been married for 22 years to a woman named Sarah. He had 2 children, a son named David, who was 19, and a daughter named Emma, who was 16. I had grandchildren, teenagers, and I had never met them. I showed him pictures of his mother. I told him stories about his childhood that he had forgotten. We laughed about the good times and cried about the wasted years. And when it got late and he had to leave, he promised to come back. He promised to bring Sarah and the kids. He promised we would make up for lost time. That was 2 years ago. Michael visits every month now. Sometimes he comes alone, sometimes with his family. I've gotten to know my grandchildren. David is studying engineering in college, and Emma wants to be a veterinarian. They call me Grandpa, even though I'm still a stranger to them in many ways. We're building something new, slowly, carefully. It's not the same as if we had never been apart. You can't get those years back, but it's something. It's more than I deserve. I'm telling you this story because I don't want you to make my mistake. If there's someone in your life you've stopped speaking to, someone you love but can't reach because of pride or anger or old wounds that never healed, I'm begging you to pick up the phone. Write the letter, show up at their door, do it today, do it now. Because 25 years goes by faster than you can imagine, and one day you'll wake up and realize you've wasted a lifetime being right instead of being together. It doesn't matter who was wrong. It doesn't matter who said what or who should apologize first. Those things seem so important when you're in the middle of the fight, but they mean nothing at the end. When you're lying in a hospital bed, when you're sitting alone in an empty house, when you're staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, wondering where your life went, you won't care about being right. You'll only care about the people you loved and whether you told them so. My father never said he loved me. I swore I would be different, and then I spent 25 years proving I was exactly the same. The only difference is I got a second chance. Not everyone does. Margaret didn't get to see her son again before she died. She went to her grave with that wound still open. I got lucky. I got time. Please don't assume you'll get lucky, too. I'm 79 years old, and my son is back in my life. I have grandchildren who are starting to know me. I have family dinners again, voices in my house, people who will be there when the end comes. I didn't earn any of this. I wasted too many years to deserve it. But grace doesn't care about what you deserve. Grace is getting what you need even when you don't deserve it. If this story meant something to you, do something about it. Don't just nod and move on. Think about who you need to call. Think about who you've let slip away. And then reach out. Today, not tomorrow, not next week. Today, because tomorrow isn't promised to anyone. And the words we leave unsaid are the ones that haunt us longest. Thank you for listening to an old man's regrets. I hope my pain saves you some of your own. And if you're estranged from someone you love, know this: it's not too late. It's never too late until it's too late. So do it now, while you still can.